So again, sort of repeating some of the messages that you saw in the video is, well, why do engineers become consultants? You would seem obvious. You go into an engineering field, you get a job as an engineer. Well, again, engineers, through their studies, they learn how to solve problems really well. They develop those problem-solving skills that they can apply in a lot of different fields, especially in IT consulting, where there's a lot of technology involved. Engineers tend to pick up on that stuff very quickly, and so they can apply those skills in those technology consulting areas. I also like IT consulting because it's a blend of technology and business. So I'm not surrounded by technology 24/7. I do get to work on the business side, and I get to work with some business folks. I find that's a really great blend. Again, as an engineer, you sort of open your doors to a lot of different job opportunities when you become an engineer, because it's the way you think, it's the way you dissect problems that are really applicable to a lot of projects that you would have as a consultant. So again, why do I personally like working at Accenture? And why do I like being in IT consulting? As mentioned a couple of times throughout the presentation and in the video, consultants tend to have a lot more short-term projects. So I get to meet a lot of different people. I get to work on a lot of different projects. I get to learn a lot of different things. I find that when I get bored, if I don't like a certain project or even a certain team that I'm on, I can switch to something different. At Accenture, I have that flexibility, and in consulting, I have that flexibility. So that's why I really enjoy that. Again, as an engineer, I do like being around technology, so it's a nice blend for me with regards to having something new, something different, but then just being able to stay in the technology field. One last thing that actually is one of the main reasons why I like Accenture is their work in the nonprofit sector. We have a group called Accenture Development Partnerships, which is basically, we do IT consulting for nonprofit groups. Some of my past clients they might have heard of, like World Vision. World Vision is one of those groups that has the commercials for sponsor a child every month, help feed a child overseas, that type of thing. World Vision is one of those folks. So they actually hire Accenture consultants at drastically reduced rates, and we help them with their nonprofit organizations, helping them implement technologies, improving the organizations, etc. So I've been able to work with several nonprofits, been able to travel overseas. I worked in South Africa for about 5 months. On one of my projects, and I thought it was a great opportunity because, again, I love to travel, and I love working with nonprofits, and I was able to apply my technology and IT consulting skills for a nonprofit organization. So with that, I know I've kind of jumped around quite a bit. I talked a little bit about my engineering and aerospace at U of I, talked a little bit about IT consulting and a little bit about nonprofit consulting as well. But I wanted to see if you guys had any other questions about my experiences. Yeah.
Okay. First, how long does one client's job normally take for you, and is that similar to for a lot of other consultants?
Sure. So the saying in consulting is the answer to every question is it depends, because it does. I have been on projects that have lasted. My longest project was about a year, so maybe 11, 12 months. I've been on projects that were a couple weeks. I would say on average in my experience for a technology project, probably a couple months is a safe answer. But again, it also depends on your interest. You know, if you like a certain company, if you like the type of work you're doing, you could probably stay on that for a little bit longer. But then if you decide that it's not for you or it's not working out, you can definitely move into something different. So like I said, for a consulting project, I would say it's probably safe to say a couple months to a year for a project, but it always depends. Yeah?
What was the name of that nonprofit organization you said you worked with?
Sure. Well, I worked with a couple. World Vision is a really big, large nonprofit. They're the ones that do sponsor a child.
Can you give us an example of what you did with them?
So one of the ones I think it's most visual is my work with the Department of Education in South Africa. So in South Africa, their schools vary from high-tech schools where all teachers have tablets and well-funded schools, very high marks, and then they have schools where it's a rural community and the students sit on a bench underneath a tree. So they have a very wide variety of schools in South Africa. So the Department of Education said, we want to be able to track our students. We need to be able to figure out who's at what school, what are their grades, are they progressing, are they graduating? So we basically worked with the Department of Education and said, okay, what are your requirements? What do you want the website to look like? And then we actually helped develop this website where teachers teachers could go in, input student grades, input their attendance, things like that. And then the teachers were also able to use the website to track students and see how they were progressing. Not only did the teachers use it, but also the folks that were higher level at the district, so they can kind of see overall how their schools were progressing.
Is there only one district of like what you say, Department of Education? Like it's just overall.
So the project that I worked on was the overall Department of Education in South Africa. Now, obviously, we have lots of different projects at Accenture, so you might have something that's a smaller district or a smaller county, whatever it might be in that country. But when we did that project, it was the entire country. So it was a big project.
So it was a little. Can you say it was a little bit disorganized?
I would say that we were working with a disorganized system, the education system, and it's more that, as I mentioned, it varies from students on a bench to everyone has a tablet. So that was a really big challenge of how do you get data from a bunch of students sitting on a bench underneath a tree in the middle of nowhere? Like how do you get that data into the system? So I wouldn't say it was disorganized. It was just a really big challenge because a lot of these people, understandably, don't have the resources to fund schools and get all their students' textbooks and all their teachers' computers to put data into. So we had a big challenge of taking requirements and talking with all different types of schools, so the ones that were well-funded and the ones that didn't have a lot of funding. So we had to work with all of those folks to make sure that the site would work for all of them. Excellent question, thanks. There are questions? Yeah.
Oh, y'all want to explain, like, how do y'all, like, y'all talk is the same way, like, how we talking now?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So when you're on the plane, it's like you're on just a regular flight. So it's a commercial airliner. It's pressurized. So when a spacecraft is depressurized, when it goes into space, all the air is let out. That's when you would be able to sort of speak to each other. But on the plane that we were on, not a problem. It was like you're on a regular flight. Just to note, this is kind of a nice diagram here. Because you can see that the highest the KC-135 goes is 34,000 feet. Your regular flight from here to the East Coast or whatever it might be is flying right around 34,000 feet. So we actually didn't go very high. It was just that the maneuvers we were doing were very drastic. So all of the air and the pressure in the cabin was exactly the same. It's just there was no gravity. Yeah?
I'm still unclear on how there was no gravity. When, because you said you go up and the engine is cut off and then you're like sinking back down.
Yep.
But so how do you not like go like to the top of the plane?
Is it because of you said the maneuvers you take?
So basically, these dotted lines are kind of helpful in this. Here is when the engine gets turned on. So you're sort of at full throttle. Basically, the engine gets turned on here, you're going up. Then the engine turns off here. You no longer have a force that's moving the aircraft up, and therefore, you're basically moving at the same rate as gravity. So to your point, we're not going to the top of the plane because there's no force pushing us up. We're just letting gravity take its effect. So the engines are cut off here, and you go up a little bit because you still have momentum up, and then you start to go over the crescent of the parabola here, and then you start going down. And of course, we don't want to go all the way down to the surface because that would be really bad. So then the engines are turned on right here to make sure that we can pull the plane back up.
Maybe if you think about like if you had a shoebox and you put a marble in it and you just shake it, right? Half of the time the marble's probably just floating around in there. Like if you're moving like this, the marble is just kind of floating because it's not fit in the box that it's not going to move when you shake it. It's going to be jumping around. So that's the people in the plane, kind of.
Yes. In that sense. It's hard to picture because it's on such a big scale.
Yeah.
I mean, this doesn't happen very often. You need a very high technology on a plane to do this sort of thing. But yeah, the main concept here is that at this point between seconds 20 and 45, there's no engines going on in the plane. It's just basically it's letting gravity take over, and then therefore it's dropping at the same rate as gravity. Therefore, it feels like you're feeling weightless.
Do you feel like you're falling or not even?
No, you don't feel it.
weightless.
The only concept of falling you have is looking out the window. So that picture I had, you can see things moving, but no, you don't feel like you're falling at all. Did you have a question?
Yeah. I was asking, did you all go into another layer of the atmosphere?
So that's an interesting question. I don't know exactly how to answer. We were in the atmosphere. We were, like I said, planes fly at about 34,000 feet. So we were no higher than an airplane. So I know there's actually quite a few different layers of the atmosphere, but we were just basically in the right.
It is technically another layer than where we are now. I think, I don't
Right.
remember, it might be the stratosphere. I forgot all the words. But
Yes, that.
it's another layer, but it's not
It's not
uncommon.
space.
You're
We were
not
not
out of
in
the ozone
space. We were still in the atmosphere, but there's some layer of air that I couldn't tell you.
But I think, I don't know if this is what you're thinking, but I was surprised that you got that kind of a picture from being just as high as a regular commercial airliner, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I don't get it.
Part of it is because you are
the
sort of
angle?
pointed upwards. So you're actually, so
Oh.
when you're on a regular airplane, you're really just looking outwards. You
And
don't usually
down.
get to look up, right?
Right. That I mean, it's a valid question. I'm sorry. It's a valid question.
I thought since it was going down, they all was going to fall in.
That would happen just after some
She
time.
says she cut the engine down, man.
Regular plane, it went
So
down.
like,
She says she's going down the same time as gravity. She just said that. I just asked the
We
question.
can talk more about this later.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I don't mind talking about it.
Is the plane